Welcome to Real Estate Radio Live, an informative and engaging podcast discussing everything you need to know about the world of real estate. Your host, Joe Caccera, provides you with insight and guidance on how to buy, sell, finance, and invest in real estate. He also offers real estate tax management strategies, new construction advice, home improvement tips, and much, much more. And now, to guide you around the world of real estate, here's your host and Real Estate Radio Live team leader, Joe Caccera.
Welcome in, Joe Caccera with Real Estate Radio Live. Thank you again for those that are watching us on the live feed. We are doing the show a little bit early today, and we do the shows when we can, and we have the opportunity. So again, I appreciate those that are continuing to watch us on the live feed. We try to stay to our schedule of Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, right around 3 o'clock Pacific Standard Time. However, again, we'll make some changes from time to time. Have Jack Russo again in studio with me. We try to do this once a week. Most of you know that I think this was reminded, this might be 22 or 23 now. We started this series several months ago, starting something new in Silicon Valley. Jack is with us. We've taken from basically the startup, right, the very early stages.
Right.
You have an idea.
Right.
What do you do with that idea? How do you raise money for that?
A lot of different steps, and the one that we're going to talk about, which I think is crucial to have in mind almost from the beginning, is there will be an exit. Right. We don't live forever. Businesses don't go on forever. They typically get sold or merged in, or something happens, or they go public, which is great. It continues, but with public shareholders. Of course, Elon Musk thinks that's hell these days, and he tried to go private and then regretted saying that, and then he got sued. I mean, that guy can write a book, and of course, if you watch the full 3 hours of his recent podcast, which is, for anyone who's invested in Tesla, you have to watch this. He goes through all of the challenges he had, and of course he's smoking marijuana and drinking whiskey, and the shareholders are pissed because some of them were texting during the live podcast saying, "What are you doing?" And the reason I raise this is because this topic is when you do a major exit, usually called a major transaction, like a sale of assets or a merger, acquisition, a reorganization, whatever, the non-disclosure agreements are signed because you really are opening the door to a lot of detail with a partner or an acquirer or someone. And then you get into, which is the topic of the day because we have this in our office right now for a client, the dueling non-disclosure agreements, the one that someone gives you, let's say you're doing a deal and it involves someone who has an investment banker. The investment banker say, well, here's the form we like to use. And of course, it's not really protective of anything. And then you look at it and say, this actually insulates you from liability. And then you or your lawyer will typically have a very pro-protective form. And then the question is, how do you merge those forms together to actually make peace so you can actually get to the next step of having a real discussion? So lawyers, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on your perspective, spend a lot of time on this initial dance. It really is like a dance. And if you are getting a big transaction, this dance will happen unless, and there are a few people that think the market moves so fast, we're not going to sign any non-disclosure, we're fine. But then keep in mind that in California, you cannot have a non-compete. As a matter of law, they are illegal under the Business and Professions Code, section 16600. There are a couple of exceptions that deal with if you've sold a business, then you can be bound not to compete in the future because you're competing with what you sold. That's 16601 and 16602.
So you can't have a non-compete if you're a regular employee or manager?
You cannot in California, and a lot of people are stunned.
I hear about them
all the time because people think, oh, that's a non-disclosure agreement, that must be equal to a non-compete. They're not equal. There's overlap in the sense that you have to protect. So let's say this file of information I brought with me, which is actually the deal paperwork, some of the deal paperwork, because we're in the midst of a big negotiation. There's stuff in that paperwork that's confidential. I can't use it, my client can't use it to develop something that is similar and competes, but they can independently throw that file away, shred it, try to forget everything you've heard, get a whole new group and say, look, I just want to be in the market of doing X, Y, and Z. Whatever's been published in the website, I want to do that. Yeah. I'm not going to tell you anything that I learned by talking to the people I've talked to, but go out there and do some research, independent research, and that's allowed. That's not a violation of the agreement. That's a typical allowed exception for any violation of even the strongest forms of these non-disclosure agreements. So think of it as it's putting a wrapper around what you have protected so long as it's actually used. But if it's not used, and if there's an independent source, which we know there's lots of independent sources, just Google a term, man, you'll find a million hits, right? As we know. Yeah. So that's a basic first point.
All right. So we're talking about non-disclosures as they relate to major transactions right now with Jack Russo. We're going to have a podcast. It's going to be a little shortened today, but we're going to pack it powerful with the information here. So before we take a real quick break, Jack, if you could again remind people your background, your firm, what you guys practice.
Right. So it's Jack Russo. I'm the managing partner of Computer Law Group in Palo Alto, downtown Palo Alto. We also have a small office in San Francisco that we're growing because Silicon Valley seems to be getting broader to the north as well as broader to the south. I mean, maybe it's all of California at this point. I had someone say, oh, yeah, it extends all the way down to St. Louis Obispo. I said, really? Isn't that like a 4-hour drive?
That's a nice place.
It's a nice place. They said, and it's got a university. And
you guys need a San Jose office.
Well, that's the next step. I mean, you might as well have a San Jose office, and then maybe you go down to St. Louis Obispo or somewhere else.
Carmel.
Santa Barbara, right? I mean, people are advertising real estate. I flip through newspapers, and it's like, move to Monterey, man. It's a lot cheaper. So we're in downtown Palo Alto, up the street from the iconic Apple store. We've been there for going on 30 years. I was previously with a big law firm, still big, still a great law firm, Fenwick & West, and they've now moved to Mountain View because they couldn't find real estate in Palo Alto that would enable them to be in one building. And we practice in areas dealing with intellectual property, business litigation, startup planning, intellectual property planning, what we call entrepreneurship. That's part of the firm, which is we want to help individuals and groups and companies get out of the gate. We typically see them very early on. And they sometimes say, hey, I want to do a deal. I mean, at the same time that we're doing this deal, a client came in saying, I really want to take some money. I finally want to take some money from a venture firm, but I really don't feel comfortable because I think they've got some competitors that they're also investing in. How do I prevent the leakage? So I said, well, you use a non-disclosure agreement. The problem is they won't sign it. The venture guys are like, are you crazy? That went out the window 10 years ago.
Because those are the last guys who will sign it.
I mean, they'll say, we'll sign the opposite. We'll sign, we're never going to respect anything other than patents if they issue, and they're valid, and we infringe them. Exactly. Or, copyrights, if you had some copyrighted code or something like that, obviously we're not going to copy that. And your trademarks.
Right.
Everything else is like open game. And you'll be like, hey, I've got a lot of good ideas. I can't discuss them with you. And they'll say, well, then we can't invest.
You can't get any money. Right? No money.
No money, no honey. And, of course, if you don't get the money, you can't get to the next step. So you're in this quandary as a founder. Who do you trust? Who do you think is telling you the right thing? It's a tough position to be in.
It really is. All right, we're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back. Stick with us for those that are following us on Facebook. Just 1 minute. We'll be back at it. Thanks.
For more information on today's program, visit RERadiolive.com. That's RERadiolive.com.
Getting ready to buy or sell a home in 30, 60, or 90 days? Check out BundleSelect.com to find out how you could save 20% or more on your entire transaction, real estate, lending, and title. With BundleSelect.com, technology and a personal concierge are at your service to save you time and money. Bundle Select's hand-picked team of experts will compete for your business so you'll save thousands of dollars by bundling real estate lending and title services. BundleSelect.com gives you all the control, including using your own realtor. I'm Joe Kuchera with Real Estate Radio Live, and I have been on the radio educating consumers for years. I'm here to tell you BundleSelect.com is the best way to save money on real estate. By bundling services, you could save tens of thousands of dollars. This savings model could save you money on your move, lower your interest rate, or cover your closing costs. Visit BundleSelect.com. That's BundleSelect.com.
The estimated minimum savings are based on a comparison with the national average. Individual results may vary, and the estimated savings are not guaranteed. Bundle Select Inc. is a licensed real estate broker. California Bureau of Real Estate Broker license number 004666902.
Welcome back to Real Estate Radio Live. For more information on today's topic or guests, just visit RERadiolive.com. That's RERadiolive.com. Again, your host for today's edition of Real Estate Radio Live, Joe Kuchera.
Welcome back. Joe Kuchera with Real Estate Radio Live. We're in studio today with Jack Russo. We're talking about non-disclosure agreements and on significant large transactions. And real quickly, just a quick summary. This actually takes us back to the beginning.
Right to the beginning. Right at the beginning. And really what you thought you really should be doing, which you should have been doing at the beginning with your team, you're now doing with another team through what might be a 5 to 10 year growth cycle because you built this thing. I mean, look, you're building something that was your baby. I mean, the Tesla, where it is today, Tesla started as a company, if I'm remembering this right, as a private company. It started in 2000, maybe 2003, because they suffered with the other car makers in 2007, 2008, when we went through that hell. Then they went public in 2010. So they've had about 8 years of growth as a public company, is what I want to say in the back of my mind. Maybe it's even later. Maybe it's 2013. But they had that first Roadster. That Roadster was based on an existing Lotus design that maybe they licensed, but they put this drivetrain in. But in the 3-hour podcast, I forget Joe something podcast, it's available. It put the guy on the map. So I say, Joe, if you can get Elon Musk in here,
I'll get him in here.
I mean, maybe he wants to redo the podcast. But in that podcast, he says how he went through hell with this significant innovative idea of putting batteries in this little tiny, it's like a pair of skates. It's hard to get in this car. It's a tiny little two-seater. And eventually they came out with the Model S, which has been the 4-door major success. And then they hyped this Model 3. And now the hype is like, hey, you're missing all your numbers. And the most recent thing, I guess they said, well, we can't produce as many colors because we want to make the factory run faster. And the paint cycle and changing the paint causes a delay. So you can get as many as you want in black or white. You know, like 3 colors or maybe 4. It's not that many. They've essentially cut the number of color choices because they're trying to drive costs down and volume up because they're trying to make their numbers. So the point is, at the very beginning, he had to be secretive with that team. Then eventually they deliver. They start showing product. They start getting patents issued. Now, if Tesla, Musk, because he tried to go private, go backwards from being public, but if it got sold as a business, that would be a major transaction. That would be like a $50 billion transaction. There would be non-disclosure agreements about all their future plans. And then little companies that are a lot smaller, that's a major, major company, public company. It's trying to change the world of electrification of cars and homes for that matter.
And there's all kinds of different, obviously, degrees and levels of non-disclosure. These, we're talking about a major transactions, of course. But like an example of Tesla, which is a good one, you have early ideas, but a lot of those involve potential patents. I mean, I know just the batteries alone, right?
That's right.
I mean, these are really involved. I mean, obviously they come to someone like you to draft these, specifically customize them.
And they become very detail, exhibit-oriented around what's the specific types of information that we're going to treat as 5-year protected information. What's the types of information we're going to treat as 1 year? What's the type of information we might treat as just 6 months? So think of it as it can be very customized to the transaction and to what's the value of the information. And then it's very arm's-length negotiated. And though you can't have a non-compete, you can put specific provisions in that say things like the burden of proving by clear and convincing evidence is on the recipient of the data that they truly did an independent development, which makes the person who might be thinking of cheating think twice.
Right.
Because, hey, I'm going to have to prove in detail that I did a clean room. A clean room, for those who are novices, is creating a room that says the people who are working in this room, they're not contaminated by any of the confidential information. So if your business, for example, your startup, if you were entering a major transaction and you signed the non-disclosure, anyone that received that data, if they really wanted to prove by clear and convincing evidence that they had not copied your data, they would get a brand new group of people into a room. It's not a physical room, but it's like a data room that says that's not going to be contaminated. And you, the independent development team, is going to show line by line how did you come up with the new idea from public sources of information. So it's going to recreate everything that you did to get to wherever you did, but show all the steps of how it got there. Now, I have to tell you, 99 of 100 times they don't get to the same idea. 99 of 100 times they'll be like, hey, we come up with something better. Let's do it this way. And then that differentiation, or sometimes in the patent world called a design around, is designing around your specific innovation that's protected as a trade secret or as confidential information. So 3 things to have in mind when you start this process. Number 1, and this is the hard part to understand, it's often a dance around marketing how valuable is what you have. So when you ask for a non-disclosure agreement in a major transaction, you're saying, I think I have something really valuable that isn't yet public. Musk could say, I've got like 50 other ideas for 50 other vehicles. They're not public yet. Yes, there are opportunities for whoever acquires this business, but they're in the drawing board stage. And I'm willing to tell you more. Now, he's already disclosed he's got a semi-truck, that a pickup truck. I guess it's called the Model Y. He's got a semi-truck, literally like a tractor-trailer kind of truck. And they've got a Roadster. And then they have something called a Roadster on steroids that has like a rocket booster to it.
That doesn't surprise me.
Like 0 to 100 in under 1 second or something, which he describes in the podcast. Now, he released that data. You could argue there must have been people in the R&D department saying, we haven't publicly disclosed that. Oh, man, he's puffing on a marijuana cigarette while he's talking about that. Of course, the next day, the Wall Street Journal. And by the way, and that's the thing you should know about non-disclosure agreements, once you release the information, even if the non-disclosure agreement says, the other party can say, you released it. I'm not prejudiced to use it. You went on the podcast, which is the reason I wanted to use the podcast, because he was probably a little high, probably more than that drunk. He said, I prefer whiskey to smoking this stuff, but I'll try both. And, of course, he was probably elevated. And he probably got some loose lips. And what was the thing from World War II? Loose lips, sink ships. And the argument is, hey, you released a lot of data. Of course, the stock took a 6% dive the next day. So, class action cases to follow, right?
Right. So there's so much here. We're going to have to do another show on this because there's so much. But in summary, you got a good idea, big or small. You got to protect it the best you can. So someone needs to come to someone like yourself, try to draft it. I know there's a basic non-disclosure, Jack. I mean, just a typical.
Right.
And that may work for basics, but other than that, something major like this, they're hiring firms to
part
craft
of it
that, right?
is this marketing dance. The marketing dance is, we have something valuable. We can afford counsel. Counsel is going to protect us. You have counsel too. We're going to do this like civilized people, and we're going to be fair with each other. And that's setting the game rules for what might be the 2 to 3 week or 2 to 3 month negotiation that sets things like price and terms and how long are you going to stay. All of that other stuff, the storyboard gets set with the opening chapter. And so I think of it as it's kind of a dance that starts the rest of the orchestra going. In other words, if you don't have a good start,
right,
the odds are, you know what, these guys were never real to begin with. They're really not making an investment in you. You think they're making an investment in you. They're really here to kick tires. You might as well flesh that out by saying, look, I've got a strong non-disclosure agreement. If you really want to dance with me, you're going to have to sign it or tell me where we adjust it, and we adjust it. So it's designed to give some sense of how real are you. And if people aren't real, then maybe say forget it.
Isn't the challenge, too, before we finish up here, you got someone that's just a new company, new software, new technology, whatever. They're getting ready to and I had personal experience with this years ago, you're getting ready to present to an industry in which you maybe left, you had an idea, so now you're coming back and you think you could change this industry. Yes. But that industry is not going to sign this, right?
No,
they're saying, well, we're working on this stuff day and night.
They'll say, get your patents, file your provisional patents, spend your money on that, get all your statutory protections, register your copyrights, register your trademarks, register your trade dress, do this, do that, do the other thing. But don't expect us to recognize anything other than what the U.S. federal government says are your solid intellectual property rights, and that's the game rules that they'll play by.
Right.
Now, there might be exceptions in situations where you do want to pick the brain of a guy like Elon Musk for a few hours. That could be valuable. The guy did it on a podcast for free, and we could all listen to it. And he talks about a lot of really interesting things that are very futuristic, and I'm sure people are poring over that to say, what are the signals about where he wants to go with SpaceX, with Tesla, with the company that does the solar power.
And do you think he's, I'll throw a twist in that, you think he's smart enough to know what he was doing and maybe mislead people to a certain extent?
Let me tell you something. There are people that say this guy is so brilliant. In fact, at one place in the podcast, they say, maybe Elon, the guy who's moderating like you, maybe you're really from Mars and you're like superpower. And he said, I've thought of that. I thought I may be like a higher intelligence being because I've got ideas. I can't even sleep. I've got so many ideas. And then he goes on to say, and so many of them make this world such a better place. So if you take the view that he is this higher intelligence, he decided to kick the company below the belt for a reason, which could be, and I almost shouldn't say it publicly, but if you want to hypothesize, the hypothetical would be he's saying to the investors that either have to belly up to the bar and put more money in to support the Model 3 and everything that follows, if you don't do this, I can torpedo this whole company and you won't get a dime from your existing investment. So you either come to the table, think about the signaling power of a CEO, a prominent CEO. This guy is probably better known than Donald Trump. I mean, if he wanted to run for president, let me tell you something, and I'd vote for you, Elon. I'm here to tell you I'd vote for I think a lot of other people would because they'd say, we need a higher intelligence being than what we have in the White House today.
Right.
People know his name the way they know Steve Jobs, the way they know few others. I bet if we made a rank order of names, they would recognize him ahead of most other people in the world.
Right.
So that's powerful. Yeah. And to go on a podcast and cause a 6% loss, and he didn't really do that much that was that bad. In fact, overall, as a whole, it was an interesting podcast because it shows he's really human.
Yeah.
And he's thinking of things all the time.
That's interesting stuff. Well, as we wrap up, again, remember non-disclosure agreements, whether you're just getting started, some of them are very extensive, very detailed, and more, you have so many different levels, right? So with anybody that has any questions about non-disclosures, Jack, this is something you and your firm specialize in as well. They could contact you.
Absolutely. Jack Russo, Computer Law Group, www.computerlaw.com, jack@computerlaw.com, or the phone number, old-fashioned, 650-327-9800, actually is a landline from AT&T, so there you go.
All right.
Thanks, Joe, for having me.
Good show.
I appreciate it.
This is Joe Kuchera with Real Estate Radio Live. Thanks again for tuning in. Until next time, have a great afternoon. Take care.
You've been listening to Real Estate Radio Live. For more information on today's program, visit RERadiolive.com. That's RERadiolive.com. Subscribe to our podcast. Discover more at RERadiolive.com.